Jordan Peterson hosted at the Daily Wire this discussion of these brilliant moralists, but he's doing it on the Ten Commandments, but specifically this goes into the area of lust.
I am less interested in the interior person, morally speaking, than you are.
That's Dennis Prager, who's one of my heroes, completely whiffing and striking out on this one.
Because I come from a behaviorist, law-based religion.
He says that he only really cares about behavior and not so much about belief.
That's why we don't have a claim that if you look at another woman with lust, it's as if you've committed adultery with her.
And then this is the great Oz Guinness, heir of the Guinness beer fortune. And I think I'll have a Guinness.
Surely the 10th commandment is exactly that. You could expound everything Jesus said from thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, or another woman you're not whatever. Mm-hmm.
Well,
the whole point of coveting, it begins in the heart. And I understand your Hebrew word for covet is a desire that doesn't stop halfway.
Right, to take.
It takes action.
It's to take.
Yeah.
This just blows away what Dennis just had, because he claims that Judaism is about behavior, whereas the 10th commandment, which it is a drive inside that makes you want to covet, and it's purely internal, and yet it's seen as a behavior, just like lust. And so that comes down to the bigger picture is, why encourage a belief or a desire that leads to actions of taking? If you foment up lust and envy and coveting inside your heart, the best way to stop the action is to stop the desire. By the time you get to the action, it's too late.
In the Christian tradition that I participate in, the call is to be transformed. The call is to be free. That's the call. Christ is calling us to be free. And so the idea of like, can you lust or can't you lust or can you do this or not this? The answer is we have desires in us, and these desires tend to enslave us. They tend to pull us into themselves. And these laws are exterior ways for you to understand how it is that you can now be free from these desires. None of the desires are wrong. Like sexual desire isn't wrong, desire to eat isn't wrong, none of these things are wrong. The problem is when they capture you.
The subordination.
Right.
Jonathan there is onto something, the idea that when they capture you. This is a heart problem. Behavior is a heart problem. Behavior isn't a behavior problem. And that's where I believe Dennis Prager gets it wrong.
You can imagine an erotic image that compels sexual desire. And I think that's part of what we're discussing, the morality of that, or its potential to be an implement to the instantiation of an ideal. You can imagine a situation where your desire is to sleep with your neighbor's wife. You're not acting on it, but the reason you're not acting on it is because she doesn't want to sleep with you. Now, it still seems to me that given that your desire is to undertake the act, and the only reason that you're not able to manage it has nothing to do with your moral stance, it has to do with the impossibility of the action. Now, given it's, I don't know how you would deal with that, because
that's a violation of do not covet. He's coveting his neighbor's wife. It's as clear as a bell.
And Dennis just negates himself because there's no action of external adultery going on. It's purely internal. The guy desires her. He's coveting her. He's envying what his neighbor has. He wants her for himself, but he can't do it. So the behavior didn't happen. His desire is all he's being condemned for. So I'd like to welcome Dennis Prager into Christianity.
There's a great gulf between the Ten Commandments and the Christian faith in this way. First of all, by the way, the Ten Commandments are painfully obvious, aren't they? Doesn't everybody know that before the tablets?
This is the great Larry Arnn, the president of Hillsdale College, one of my favorite thinkers for over 20 years. I've kind of followed in his footsteps.
There's a great man, he's dead now, his name is Harry Newman, and he styled himself a nihilist. And we would argue with him about that all the time, and he was a very, very learned man and a great teacher. And so sometimes when he wanted to put the point that he's a nihilist, he would say, I'm a non-practicing Orthodox Jew. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that emphasizes the point that it is a set of practices more than a set of beliefs. Whereas Christianity is more a set of beliefs.
It is belief. Those who believe are saved. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It's less preoccupied with actions. Definitely actions play into it, but here's Jordan Peterson mysteriously wearing the Joker's blazer.
I'd like to challenge Larry's supposition, just for the sake of discussion. Are these self-evident? And I would say they're not exactly self-evident to psychopaths.
Jordan Peterson, this is a rare moment that he poops his pants, because that's hardly fair to say. Of course, nothing is going to be clear to a psychopath. To someone who's just deranged, it's like saying, what are the 10 Commandments to someone in a coma? Or what are the 10 Commandments to a fetus? It's like they don't have the knowledge that the whole point of a psychopath is, or a sociopath is, they don't have the ability to engage, and that's what's wrong with them. That's why you got to lock them up.
Right, so the self-evidence argument's a really interesting one, because you could add the psychopathy twist to all of these. It would be, well, thou shalt not kill unless you can get away with it, and it works in your favor. The same with adultery, the same with stealing. And the question there would be something like, well, why shouldn't I do this if I can get away with it?
These are the most important ethical discussions of our time. I wanted to bring them to you just to introduce you to a few of these names, because I didn't want to just get stuck in pure political talk. Thank you for indulging me. It's great to see Jordan Peterson run this kind of a discussion over at Daily Wire. And if you want to see more of this, give us a sub. I'm Doug in Exile.